What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In this video, I've got another very important AMC update to bring all of you this afternoon. So what we're going to be covering in this update video is a little bit of the typical stuff that we like to go over, the Ortex short interest and utilization, the option chain going into this next week, and what we're looking at on that really big options expiration date coming up in January. But there are two main things that I really want to discuss in this video. One of them has to do with kind of a furtherance of what we've talked about in the past with the DTCC. I've kind of been going through some other examples of abusive naked short selling. There are honestly so many of these examples, and with the DTCC saying that if this was happening, they would immediately be able to detect it, is honestly just completely incorrect. If you guys can tell, I'm kind of fired up to make this video. And then we also have to talk about some things that we are able to do in order to almost set off the squeeze. Now, this isn't any sort of manipulation. This is just some sort of things that we need to be able to see in order to get that buying volume back into the stock, in order for us to see that uptrend that we all know is possible. So before we get into all of that information, if you enjoy the information and analysis that I provide for you in this video, make sure you go down and hit that like button. It costs you nothing to do it, but it really helps us out a whole lot in getting this information out to as many people who want to learn. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you're notified every time I post a new video. I also hope everybody had a safe, fun New Year's yesterday. Let's kick off the new year on a really, really strong note. So when we come over to these Ortex numbers right here, let's give this a quick refresh. We're seeing the utilization at 77.23%, the estimated short interest 17.26%. Again, guys, this drop in the short interest that we are seeing is not the result of shorts covering. It is the result of Ortex kind of maneuvering its numbers around to account for the previous exchange reported short interest that we received on December 27th and on December 15th when this settlement date was. They were overestimating that short interest. So nothing to be really worried about. There's always going to be a difference between what the reality is out in the market of the shorts that are actually having effect on the price action and the data that we are receiving. But again, Ortex is our best option that we have right now in order to get a glimpse at this data. So coming over to the option chain here quickly, we can see for this next week here, there's really nothing crazy going on the option chain. So I've kind of been doing some thinking about options here. And when we actually see a lot of these options really start to pay retail investors and we make a decent amount of money on these run-ups, and they typically only happen around those quarterly expirations. So again, options are incredibly risky. I am not giving financial advice here, but definitely take a second look back at when we've seen the price movements on AMC in the past, and really try to be smart with where you're putting your money on options, because if they expire worthless, you are just giving money right to the option sellers, which are most likely market makers in large institutions betting against AMC. Now, with what we're seeing on this January 21st, 2021 expiration date, it's absolutely nasty still. 110,000 contracts in the money right now. And again, these contracts are concentrated very deep in the money. So they're not going to really be able to get a lot of these out of the money. Even if we were to see a decent sized drop in AMC, we would still have 100,000 or even 90,000 call contracts still in the money after a very significant drop. And there's 475,000 contracts out of the money right now, and that number is only going to increase, which increases the exposure that these market makers have. Now, let's get into some of the main things that I want to go over in this update video. So we have to go back very briefly to the statement that the DTCC has made. The DTCC officials said that if extra shares entered the system beyond the 513 million for AMC shares currently registered, they would be immediately detected. Well, even if they're detected, what are you going to do about it? So it kind of comes down to this really important concept that I want everybody to understand, that nobody's coming to save us. We aren't going to have the regulatory institutions, the DTCC, FINRA, NSCC, the SEC. They're not going to come in and essentially allow this situation to play out. Yes, they could be getting their ducks in a row to really figure out how to kind of manage this situation in order to have a lot of these institutions not completely blow up the financial system, but they're not going to really help us out either. So here's what we really need to look at. When we come over to this page right here, It all really comes down to the NSCC's and the DTCC's stock borrow program and continuous net settlement, CNS. When we look right here, this is not the case under CNS because the NSCC guarantees the trade, meaning that if you do not locate a borrow on a stock, which is essentially saying, yep, we have the shares, we can loan them to you, and you can then short, so that even if the seller of the stock fails to deliver, the transaction still goes through. So essentially what this is like in the market right now is, let's just say there's a boxing match. And while the boxing match is just starting, somebody gets word that one of the participants in that boxing match has tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs, and they don't stop the match. They're going to figure it out after, and they continuously let this situation go. Now, when we come down over here to an example of this, this article goes through how these phantom shares, synthetic shares, these naked shorts are actually created, but I don't want this video to be too long, so we are going to go over this situation in depth on the stream on Monday. But essentially what is going on in this section right here is it kind of explains to us that even if the DTCC was really able to see and have a good record of what was going on in the market. Remember, AMC and GME and any of these other stocks that are potentially getting naked shorted right now, they are one of thousands of stocks that are trading out on the open market. It is relatively impossible for them to be able to essentially see what is going on. Now, this is just an example of how this would work in a hypothetical situation. But when we come over here, this is Global Links Corporation, which I'm really happy that people are finally starting to pay attention to what happened with Global Links. We've been talking about this since the summer, and there's been a video spread about this situation on Twitter over the last couple of days. So shout out to everybody that has been sharing this. But Global Links Corporation is an example of how wholesale counterfeiting of shares will decimate a company's stock price. Global Links is a company that provides computer services, yada, yada, yada. But essentially what happened here is that Robert Simpson purchased all of the shares of Global Links, registered with the SEC, took delivery of the shares, did not trade a single share over the next couple of days, and about 50 million shares were traded on the over-the-counter market. And when we see down here, it is more likely the SEC has not done anything about this fraud. This was actually in front of I believe the House Financial Services Committee, and members of the SEC were testifying about the situation. And again, nothing happened. So this kind of furthers what we're saying here about there's nobody really coming to the rescue here. The most egregious and aggressive situation where we've really seen naked shorting really come into effect was actually back in 2008. The attack on Bear Stearns, for example, began on January 9th when hedge funds naked shorted more than 1.1 million shares. The shares failed to deliver at the end of Friday, January 11th, for the next 4 days, beginning Monday, January 14th. There were massive failures to deliver, peaking at 1 million shares on January 17th. That is, the attack lasted a total of 8 days, with failures to deliver lasting precisely 5 days. On day 6, there were few failures to deliver, so Bear Stearns did not appear on the threshold list. That is a calculated attack, because when they essentially are only going to be shorting for or creating a lot of these failure to delivers throughout that 5-day period, they know that if the failure to delivers persist on that 6th day, we see right here, there would be a flashing red light to the SEC, and the stock would end up showing up on the threshold list. Also, the fact that the threshold list even exists in the first place is kind of a sign that naked shorting, synthetic shorting, whatever you want to call it, is a prevalent issue in our market. So when the DTCC comes out and says, oh no, if we saw this was happening, we would detect it and be able to do something about that, obviously they can't. Again, when we come down here, we can see some of the other ways that they are using very, very similar to what we have seen on AMC. A week later, just before CNBC's David Faber reported the false information given to him by a, quote, hedge fund friend whom he had known for 20 years that Goldman Sachs had cut off Bear's credit, somebody naked shorted more than 1 million shares of Bear's stock. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, there was a sustained effort to drive the stock to zero. Now, again, a lot of these financial companies, financial services companies back in 2008, yes, they did have a lot of issues. But at the end of the day, if these companies are going to fail and they were not really going to be able to figure out what to do, which is essentially what we saw, there's a giant global financial meltdown. And the banks that essentially were the ones holding a lot of these risky derivatives were the same ones trying to naked short other companies doing the same thing out of business. Now, again, we see it with Lehman Brothers right here. So What we're really looking at here is just because we have a really good idea in understanding that there's naked shorting out in the market, it's very, very difficult to prove. Yes, we can see the failures to delivers really spike. Yes, there are other ways for us to really get a good understanding through the derivatives market that they're creating this synthetic short interest. But at the end of the day, all it really tells us is that there's more shares out there that the shorts are going to need to cover when we start to see that next massive price run up. And just because they're naked shorting these stocks doesn't mean that they need to cover them anytime soon. So what can we do as retail investors to really kind of put ourselves in the best position and set ourselves up for the best 2022 for these stocks that we like? Well, this first thing that we are going to say, it may upset some of you, but we really need to just spread our voice and make sure that everybody is starting to figure out again about this AMC situation, especially at these lower prices. Now, we aren't necessarily seeing a lot of new money coming in, which is essentially what we need to see. And there's a variety of ways to really share this information. If you are seeing a video that you like potentially on YouTube, make sure you are engaging with the creators that you like. Now, this isn't me coming out and saying, oh, like the video, comment, so I can get more views and we can make more money. That's not essentially what we're saying. I just want more people to really know what we are dealing with here so we can kind of get that new money in if people want to really participate in this situation. And again, it doesn't even have to be on my videos. It could be Trey, Matt, TMI, Wrench, anybody else creating content that you enjoy. Same thing on Twitter, same thing on Reddit. When we see a lot of these, of Matt and Trey going on CNBC or Fox, we need to make sure that our voices are being heard and we are presenting information in a very clear and succinct way. The other thing is that when we are looking at these two stocks, AMC and GME, we know that there is a lot of manipulation and fraud going on behind the scenes. Is it provable right now beyond a reasonable doubt that we could present this in a court of law? Not necessarily yet, but we all know what is going on. And we also know that these large institutions are watching us. Right here, this JP Morgan situation, the banks through the retail lens tool is essentially using retail sentiment in order to help out these shorts or longs, however you want to look at it, these institutional clients of one of the largest prime brokers that exists in the market today. So when we're thinking about this right here and we start to see red days and a lot of people are getting very, very, very upset, we can't get upset really because we all have to know going in that these stocks are very, very, very volatile. I am incredibly bullish on these stocks going forward. And honestly, when I see these dips, you guys see me on stream, I honestly just kind of laugh at them right now because we essentially know where these stocks are headed once we really start to get going. The other thing is that if retail sentiment is going to stick around and we also see AMC really starting to take its business in the right direction, which we are seeing right now through the NFTs, through the popcorn sales, and through all of these new movie theaters coming out, it allows for institutions to feel more comfortable putting more money into the stock. Here is why institutional investments into AMC is so important. When we think about the percent ownership breakdown of a lot of what we're looking at on AMC, well, we know that we own about 70 to 80% of what is actually out in the market for AMC. I know a lot of people bring up that 90% number, but it is pretty wildly misinterpreted on exactly what that means. And basically institutions, we've seen some of the numbers say that they own around 30%. So these numbers are changing on a day-to-day basis, but all of retail's money is spread out across many, many individuals, around 4 million retail investors. If we wanted to essentially do what the institutions can do and put buy orders in, big buy orders in, we would need to collude and try to manipulate, which we cannot do. But the institutions are essentially one entity with a lot of money, and if they decide to buy AMC or GameStop or any of these other stocks in a large amount, it is going to have an effect on the price. So the institutions need to feel comfortable putting these money into their investments, which having a lot of voices, really coming out with good information, AMC increasing its fundamental value, which I will always, always, always say is a very important part of this situation because the short thesis is based off of the fundamentals. And if you can disprove that short thesis and really say that, okay, well, AMC is increasing fundamentally, the movie theaters are not dead, they're not dying, they're not going anywhere, well, we are going to see the shorts start to slowly get out and institutional investors continue to pour that big money in. So that is mainly going to wrap up this update on AMC. At the end of the day, what we really need to do going forward is spread the word about this situation, make our voices heard. We have really gone through a lot over this last year in 2021. Now we are in 2022. We need to really kind of tighten up, make sure we know what we are doing and what our goals are as a community, and really get the information out to as many people who are potentially interested in fighting against what happened back in 2008, what was happening way before that, and what is happening at the current time today. So again, that is going to wrap up this update on AMC. If you enjoyed the information and analysis that I provided for you in this video, make sure you go down and hit that like button. It costs you nothing to do it, but it really helps us out a whole lot in getting this information out to anybody who wants to learn. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you're notified every time I post a new video. So I hope you guys are having a great evening, and I'll see you guys in the next video.